Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to the last week of Black History Month here with Car Crash Productions. Hello, hello, Isabella. Yes, we're glad to see that you've joined on here. Yes, hello, hello, Alicia. Yeah. We're just me and William are getting ready here to set up another chat for you guys, just to talk a little bit about what we've learned this past month, and about all of the amazing work that we've seen from these artists that have come from all over the world to help us with this, bring this all together. And without further ado, here is Mr. William Dickerson. Let's see what he has to say. Let's pull him up here. Yes. Yeah, here we come. Hey, yes, our day is going well, Isabella. Thank you. Oh, look, there he is.
What's going on?
I'm
How
good.
y'all doing?
You know what? Your camera was better the other way.
Was it?
Yeah,
Let's see if I can get this figured out. Yeah.
there we go. Nice.
Yo, got it figured
Man,
out.
here we are, man. Here we are. One week of the Black History Month project that we've been working on. How have you been feeling about everything?
It's been feeling great, man. It's been great having these conversations and getting to know new people across well, I guess the world, huh?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So it's been good. It's been and hard, right? Like it's hard to talk about these kind of issues, especially a person that does it all the time. Sometimes it can be triggering and hard to do, but
Yeah.
we must, right? So
Exactly, exactly. If we didn't, didn't have these conversations, then there would be no progress, I guess. But
exactly,
yeah,
exactly.
and we've had some amazing conversations as well as seen some amazing work. Just some awesome, challenging, moving work from a lot of these other artists that we've encountered. From the very beginning of the week, or of the first week when we talked about identity, just having that dialogue with you, and seeing Alexis's piece, and McCady's piece, and then following the weeks after that, seeing Reese's piece, and then this week with Gabrion's and Ryan Ruel's, and just really great stuff.
Yeah,
Just great
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Then challenged me and have helped me to see a lot of my friends' lives from different perspectives and stuff. And so that's been really good. But
Yeah, they've been
um,
incredible, man. They've been incredible.
yeah, yeah. So, just to recap for everybody out there who may not know what we've been, looking at over these past 4 weeks, are four themes: identity, um, oppression, talking about how talking about systemic oppression and how that manifests itself and what we can do to get around that. Last week we had an incredible conversation with the Sean Rivera, the Grammy nominated Sean Rivera, who was
Yeah,
just a pleasure to chat with, just a really cool guy, and just had a lot of stuff to say about his experience, especially within the industry. We talked with him about overcoming, what that means to overcome. So this week, we're going to tackle the subject of representation
mm,
and see if we can unbox what representation means, you know, in our world today, in our respective environments that we work in, and just see what that means. So William, how would you how would you define representation in this context?
yeah. I mean, I think that the way I like want to go about it is there's a organization that I'm part of called Faith in Action. It was used to be known as PICO, People
Mm-hmm.
Improving Community Through Organizing. And
Mm-hmm.
um, about 4 or 5 years ago, there was this moment, this like reckoning that Faith in Action had to have with itself around the fact that they were working in all these communities of people from the global majority, right? Um,
Yeah.
and
majority.
A
Yeah.
global majority. And so, you got all these black and brown folks, and actually a lot of Asian folks as well that were doing community organizing at that particular time. Some First Nations people, and a part of what ended up happening is you had all of these organizers that were working under pretty much almost all white directors, white executive directors. So everybody's boss was white, but then you had all of these people of color that were staff, and then you had again, I'm still getting used to the language, but like what I mean is like people of the global majority, like also in the communities that they were working in, were also all dark hued people, and there was this reckoning around, you're giving us like you're like it almost became like the space around like when are we going to be invited into the power structures of an organization to influence the way in which it operates and works. The people who were influencing the thought process around how like the structures and the infrastructure of organizing was working were all pretty much white folks. And so when that happens, when you create a structure like that, you're only creating a structure where one lens of people gets to influence in stronger ways how the structure is going to work moving forward. And so, I mean, you can't change racism unless you start to bring more races of people into power positions that can start to make decisions and choices about what the structure and infrastructure an institution of these different like facets of work.
Yeah. And just to clarify, we're not just talking about like just putting them in little peon positions. We're talking about putting them in positions where they have power and where they make decisions. Is that what you're
Exactly.
saying?
Yep. Like on our board of directors, as
Mm,
executive directors, as
mm,
CEOs, as presidents,
mm,
as city council people. Like, if you want to actually eradicate racism in our context, you have to have people that are not only hell bent on it, but then have a lens around what oppression looks like so that they can
yeah,
undo that in our
yeah.
context.
I got you. I got you 100%. And so, where does a person, I mean, how do we start, you know, how does that kind of stuff get implemented? I mean, you see people, they apply for jobs, they go out there and try and get, put themselves in these different positions to get hired to in these different roles of power. But how do we, I mean, where does it start?
Yeah, I mean, you know, this is interesting because it kind of comes around full circle to the reason that in United States we had this thing that got created earlier on. I couldn't tell you the dates because I'm not really a date person, but like I
Mm-hmm.
know that we had a thing that got started. It was called affirmative action.
Mm-hmm.
And affirmative action was like an answer to the racism that would keep people from being able to get into colleges, that would keep people from being able to go and get a higher paying job or different paying jobs. Like there were just certain industries that particularly Black people, but all folks of the global majority were really getting left out of, and were only being left for particularly wealthy white people. Um, and so affirmative action was kind of created to address that, and also address like representation of women, representation of all these different kinds of types of groups of people, or
Mm-hmm.
different identities of people. And what those kind of laws and those kind of structures do is they make it so that it doesn't rely on a person who might have prejudice against another person, racial prejudice, quite frankly, racism,
Mm-hmm.
and that will avoid hiring people because based around the name that they see on the application, will avoid hiring people when they come into the space. Like if they have a name like William, you know, they might assume I'm white, but when I come in and I'm Black, they can still avoid like hiring me. Um,
Interesting. And so, oh, there's a little technical. There we go. There we go. You're back.
yeah, we need more
That's interesting.
structures that like create those kinds of opportunities. Like if I think about um, like the entertainment industry, right? You
Mm-hmm.
know, it's not good enough to just have people being represented as as like singers and actors, and it's like who are the directors, who are the producers, who are the people that own record labels, all those different things. What do they look like, and how much power do they have to influence the industry itself? Those are the things that will that increase representation.
Yeah, and I mean, what is a balanced representation like? What does a balanced room look like? You know what I mean? Because there's talk about representation and bringing more people on and stuff like that, but then how do you make it so that not one group is more ostracized than another and stuff like that? How do we make sure that there's? I mean, is there a balance even?
Right. I
You know?
mean, I'm like, part of me just wants to say, be good people, but I know, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, just be good people.
Yeah.
No, from if I was being honest, I think part of what needs to happen at this point in time is, sometimes the balance has to shift the other direction to
Yeah.
actually create equity balance. When groups of people have been behind for so long, are you having a hard time hearing me?
No, no, I can hear you.
Oh, when people have been behind for so long, in all the ways that we find ourselves behind, um, you got to create like opportunity and space for people to catch up. And so representation doesn't always mean balanced, it means equitable.
Mm.
Um, Now, that being said, I do think that at some point in time, the representation should like look like the representation of, our country, of our world. And that would look a whole lot different than what we have right now.
Mm. Mm.
Like I say people the global majority because, we have all of these interesting words for, people who have darker hued skin. It's minority, people of color, like these different words that like minimize like really what we're actually talking about when we're talking about a conversation about representation. People of
Yeah.
the majority makes a statement around the fact that like the darker hued people that we're talking about are like more than the lighter hued white Europeans that we're talking about in
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
larger context. And so what should representation look like? It should look like that around power.
Elaborate on that a little bit. Well, like maybe not elaborate, but like it should look like it should represent what the actual world represents.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And context, right? So if I'm talking about the United States, and the power structure of the United States, like how power operates and works should have a representation of what the United States looks like, which
Mm.
is also moving into like a global uh, majority country.
Yeah.
By 20, I think it's by 2040, there will be more people, the global majority in this country than there will be white people.
You know what's interesting to me, actually, I noticed this the other day. I was thinking about this. Folks that live closer to the in closer to a larger city, you see a lot more of that representation. You see a lot more diversity, all that kind of stuff. But it's when you get to obviously to the outskirts where you see a whole lot less of it. You
Mm-hmm.
think that that's the minority, but in reality, that's actually like with our whole voting stuff, the voting structure right now. Really all the quote unquote disenfranchised folks that were living on the fringes.
Mm-hmm.
Like folks, when you go into the bigger cities, you see the representation there, and you see the diversity and all that. But really, on the outskirts, it doesn't look like that at all. But yet,
Yeah.
those are the folks who are the ones making, who are in control of what happens.
Yeah.
And they are technically, at least in this country, a lot of them are the minority,
Mm-hmm.
but not, the global minority in
Mm-hmm.
in the context that we're talking about here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, and that goes even around the world. I even noticed like in London and in England, in England in general, like London is this, big booming place of diversity from people all over the world, all over the entire world. But then you go out into the fringes, in the little cottages and stuff, kind of where, I lived, and you see more of the people who have these sentiments of, you know, um, trying to protect, if you know what I'm saying, protect the culture, so to speak, in so many, exactly, so many ways. But it's funny to think that all of these people who are living in the global minority are the ones who are actually making the majority of the decisions. How do we infiltrate that?
Yeah, that's a really good question, man. It's a part of this is that we have to want to, there is a way in which folks have to want to start to make space around this kind of stuff, or you force it, you force people to do something. And I don't know that that's worked. I mean, I think that there have been ways in which we see across the world, we try to force people to do things they don't want to do, and eventually that just bubbles up and comes up again. I think this whole election in the United States right now is proving that. It's just proving that we force people to hire people they didn't want to hire. We force representation in ways that people didn't want to do. We forced systems on people, and they just found a way around it because their hearts and their minds weren't changed around it. So there's there's something sitting there for me around that. And I think the other piece around infiltration is really connected to relationship and proximity. So it is harder to oppress somebody that you consider friend than it is somebody you don't know. And then if you can start to connect the person that you consider friend with the race of people or the hue of people that they might look like, you create that proximity even stronger. And the more relationships you have with people coming from the global majority, the more you want good for them, right? And so I think that, from my perspective, in some ways, and I actually don't mean this to be flippant or the end all be all. I think structural change and all this other powerful stuff needs to happen. I think we need to eat more together, to tell you the truth. As different races of people. I mean, think about the place where most love and laughter and joy and learning about one another happens. It's around the dinner table, or it's around a table where there's food. You dig what I'm saying?
Yeah. That's a really good point. I mean, I know in my travels for sure, especially at the school in Italy, that's all you had. That was the only place you had to eat. You know what I mean? You all met in the same cafeteria, which wasn't at the time when I was there. I mean, it's different now because they've expanded, but it was just a small, 100-person possible cafeteria, you know what I mean? And you had to walk through the same line, you wait in the same line. I mean, and you are forced to interact with people, and interact with people who don't speak the same language as you, and you learn from there to build those connections. I mean, and then you sit around the table, and if the thing that I learned was, if everybody's chatting and having a good time, but because if you don't understand what they're saying, you better find a way to make yourself understood.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And by making yourself understood in this group, then you're able to. I completely agree with you. There is something special about the community of sharing a meal together. There's something very special about that, even from just a simple potluck at church. Yeah. Although church, for a lot of folks, church have different connotations. If you're sitting around people, they feel
don't like you. Yeah,
exactly. They might retreat from that. So I recognize that, but that's just a lot of different. That's another context of But
Oppression.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so then going back to representation and just channeling a little bit more back towards um, maybe even our respective contexts. Have you had an experience where you have had to uh, make yourself force yourself to be represented or like thrown in a position of representation?
Yeah, that's interesting. That's it's an interesting way that you asked it because I can think of times where I had to like push myself into more powerful positions.
Hmm.
Um, and I don't know that I would have said it was to become more represented, even though that's what it created.
Mm.
So as a part of, I was telling you about Faith in Action, right? And like the struggle and the wrestle that they went through during the time of when they were PICO, People Improving Communities, through organizing. And um, I there was a point in time where I was working for one of the affiliates of them, one of the federations, as they call it, in
Mm.
Colorado. And I was like I was just a community organizer there, and I'd been working there for quite some time, and was waiting for the opportunity to become a lead organizer, like a pipeline for me to become a lead organizer, which is like a promotion from being just a community organizer.
Hmm.
And um, like I had to make a case for why that should be the case, Like, oftentimes our structures and where they're set up, if you don't make intentional structures for pipelines for people to move through, people will stay in the position until they ask for it. And you don't want that because people, especially folks coming from the global majority, a lot of us have been oppressed for so long. We've been taught things to help us to keep our job. We've been taught things to help us to at least stay in working so that we can provide for our families, and aren't always taught the things that are like really important, like how to negotiate your salary to go higher, how to so like negotiating a raise. We don't talk about like how to step into higher positions that like oftentimes people who have more access to privilege and power will be able to know, like, if I want a raise, I ask for a raise. If I want a promotion, I ask for a promotion. While
Mm.
those who are not don't have as much access to power and privilege are oftentimes taught the opposite, which is like be happy with what you have. And that's
Yeah.
both in like the undertone of the society and also in the overtone of like what you're taught at home, what you're taught on television, all those different kinds of things. And so
Yeah.
for me, um, I had to make my request known. I had to make it known that like I belong here and I matter here and I've done lots and lots of work here and I deserve a raise. I deserve a promotion. I deserve to be in the new position.
Mm.
Um,
And a lot of that fit into you coming into your identity of yourself and what you are capable of doing. Just,
Ah, I saw
you
what
know,
you did there,
you know
brother.
what
I
I'm
saw
saying?
what you did there.
Like just, tying it all together, like it's funny how all every theme that we've, come through, tackled, I should say, this month, it all funnels into each other. And I love how the crossover between all these conversations and how we've been able to pull, concepts from previous conversations into this. But yeah, yeah, I mean, just going back to your story, you came into yourself, you knew your value and you knew what you brought and how you could best represent the company with your skill set,
Yeah,
and you went for it, and you went for it.
yeah.
Mhm. And thinking about like
And then,
being
well, and then like too, also, man, it's like once I got there, then I helped to make the structure so that it was possible, so that people didn't have to do what I did. And that's
mm,
so when you're talking
mm,
about representation, like that's even bigger part. Like we have like our Oprah Winfrey's and our Jay-Z's and our Eddie Murphy's and our like all these different kinds of, like, I'm naming entertainers because that's generally how we get like that kind of like the kind of power.
yeah.
Um, and so it's like really pushing them to think about the fact that like it actually didn't get there easily, and that like they could be using their money and resources to create pathways.
Uh-oh. Here we go. To create pathways. You were saying to create.
Yeah, to create pathways for others to be able to step into the industry, right? Like
Yeah.
if you become a producer, the first thing you should be doing is creating opportunities for other people from the global majority to become producers.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
if you are able to become a rapper, the next thing you want to do is try to create the conditions for people to be able to become rappers or singers or
Mm-hmm.
basketball players or doctors or president of the United States. You want to create the conditions so that it's easier for the next people to do it because you knew how hard it was.
Now that's different than giving handouts to folks. I mean, there's a certain element of right. I want to clarify. I want to see what your where your head is at with that because there's a
Yeah.
balance, right? You know what I mean? There's a balance between paving the way for somebody and then giving them a handout so that they don't have to understand the concept of working hard for something.
I mean, yes and no. So like a part of like the where I come from is like I think the idea of like working hard and like working for what you got and all those different elements are things that like the United States has like tried to put inside of our brains to help to get us to think that like capitalism and the idea of capitalism is actually working. I know this is going to be unpopular for folks watching probably.
Conversation.
But like I think that there's this idea that if you work hard, at least in our context in our country, if you work hard, if you work really hard, then you'll be successful, which has not proven to be true for the majority of the people in our country.
Mm,
So if it was true that hard work would make you more successful in this country, the like your Bill Gates would be flipped with the workers that like help to manufacture and make sure that all of the products that he thought about, and I put that in quotes because we none of us really think about a thing on our own, but that
mm,
he innovated and he thought about
mm,
gets on people's shelves. Like they're working the overtime shifts. He's not
mm,
working nearly as much as they're working.
mm,
And so there's this dichotomy of like hard work gets you rich, while what we see is that hard work keeps you poor. And so it's like there's this thing like my dad, one of the hardest workers that I know. We aren't influencing policy. We aren't able to make no change.
mm,
Your dad, right?
yeah.
One of the hardest one of the hardest men I know working out here. Um, we have families that like work really, really, really hard, 2, 3, 4 jobs, and can't get out of poverty. And so I just wanted to put that in context to answer the question around like, no, I don't believe, I actually believe that everyone should have a skin in the game, communal skin in the game. I don't think that people should just be sitting around waiting for someone to hand them money, or hand them resource. Um,
Right.
and I do also believe that we have to change our thinking around what a handout means and what a hand up means based around our own definition and not around the definition that like the this country particularly, but our world is kind of like selling to us.
And that's why I wanted to ask that. That's exactly why I wanted to ask that because some people who may be either listening or who may have had a discussion in this similar context, you know, might get that mixed up as to, well, is he talking about, you know, paving the way or is he talking about like, you know, giving handouts? And that's why I wanted to just get your mind around
Yeah, yeah,
that and hear your thoughts around that because that's going to be a big piece of representation, especially if we're talking about, um, you know, getting ourselves into positions where we can help others get into positions or like, of power and all that stuff like that.
yeah.
But even back to the context of, um, like putting it in the context of, um, uh, the entertainment industry and the arts and media and all that stuff. Um, there, you had touched a little bit on it, and seeing it in movies and having directors and producers and people on set being represented appropriately. And it just makes me think about some of the experiences that I've had Going back to, I think when we were having the conversation with Alexis about Reese's piece when back at grad school,
Mm-hmm.
and how he was not represented to the caliber of what his skills, as we have seen through his monologue, were able to showcase.
Yeah.
And like that just comes from the people who we put in these positions of power, like i.e. the directors, to bring on these people, and how they or even the casting directors, when you look at these casting directors, how do we know that they're going to go in there and, appropriately choose somebody who actually fits that role? It is, it's great to see a lot of these newer shows coming up, because you do see the effects of of positive representation coming through, and like the blowhorn, I guess, so for lack of a better term, of that has been being, blown into, the loud mic, the loudspeaker that has been being spoken into over these past few decades. And now that we're seeing these new shows come up with people who even just look different, like physically, people who are bigger, or people who are smaller, or people who have like a crooked nose, or something, or cross-eyed, or whatever, like they're just starting to represent not just this standard beautiful person over here with blonde blue eyes, whatever. They're starting to represent, people who are color, people of the global majority, or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Or people who, like I said, who may not have a six-pack. You know what I'm saying? Or anything like that.
Let me do that too.
I'm like, COVID-19. But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's really nice to see how representation is starting to manifest in this industry. And I feel like, for myself personally, as an actor going into this industry, that it's twofold. I feel like there's a lot of hope, for folks who look like me and who have the same skill set, but also there's also that fire that is lit under our butts. That's like, well, now that people know that these doors are opening, how do we get in there so that we're not left behind? You know what I mean? So yeah, that's just, I'm proud to see where it's going and where it's come from, for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's like powerful, and I think that part of the reason that it happened that way is because people were protesting things like the Oscars, like people were taking risks, and like scrutinized for them, like outwardly speaking out, even using their platform when they would win things to speak out against what was happening around them. It's like those kinds of things that made that unpopular. And one of the things I'm recognizing is that sometimes you don't get people to change their minds because they like people. You get them to change their minds because of how it's going to impact their pockets. And so it's like not bad or good. It just is. It just is the way that it is. I'm like, oh, I hear my son at the door. Here he comes.
You know what? Actually, though, that's an interesting point.
Morning. Good morning. Can you say good morning to everyone?
What's up, buddy? Welcome to our live chat. Your first live chat of many, I'm sure.
Say thank you. Thank you. All right. See you, man.
I go make the Superman.
Okay, go get the Superman. Go get the Superman. I'm almost done. Oh, you're gonna go make a snowman. See you. He's up.
you have just represented Black fathers everywhere.
Yeah. So we exist. There's a lot of us, actually.
That's right.
Please kill the stereotype.
That's right. Black dads matter. I saw a shirt that said that, and I was like, yes, man. Yeah. I was like, when we start, thinking about that, I'm gonna have to get me a shirt that says Black dads matter. But you know what's funny though? Something that you mentioned. I was reading this article yesterday about an actor who, just about a young kid who was talking about his experience with representation. But you know what? I lost my train of thought on that.
My bad.
and so it's all good. If it comes back to me, it's meant to happen. But
Mm-hmm.
really though, I just want to give a shout out to everybody who's like come on and watched us, and tuned into this live thing today. And it might be a little bit late, but if you had any questions or anything like that, please, we're here to also just, not just talk between the two of us, but to hear your feedback as well, and to, see what you all have to say. And we can't wait to hear the comments after this too, so that we can have a proper chat afterwards. But anyway, so yeah, go ahead, William. What were you going to say? You were finishing up about your experience with. Did you?
I was?
Oh, no.
No,
Yes.
I'm here. I can't remember what I was gonna say. I mean, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say then it might be time for that pineapple pizza because like I gotta have my pineapple pizza. but really though, I'll just go back and I'll say, over these last couple weeks, talking about all of these things have really been enlightening for myself. I know that we have another couple projects coming up. There's going to be some poems that are gonna come up at the end of this month, going into next month, where we'll get to see one of our own Onyeka Henry, who's going to drop the word, and so we're excited to see her do that. And just another shout out to every single body who has participated in this project. If I start naming names, I won't forget because I'm going to forget, somebody, and I don't want to do that. So I'm just going to say a blanket thank you to everybody who has contributed their skills, even on the back end. I mean, like folks, even on Car Crash Productions, who have tirelessly been editing and putting stuff together and putting these posts together so that everybody can enjoy them. They just have a huge shout out to the folks at Car Crash Productions, because without them this would not be possible. And so a word from our sponsors. Here's a word from our sponsors.
This is really great, man. It was a lot of fun. Loketa, sorry, you did miss it. You'll just have to catch it on the back end.
That's right. You did.
That's my sister for real. I really appreciate you, Sean. Asking me to be a part of this project. This was a really not just enlightening for me, it was fulfilling. It's just been nice to meet new people and be in different conversations about one of the things I talk about often, which is race, man. And so I'm just so appreciative of it, for sure. This may be it for me.
Likewise.
So let's go outside.
At that note, we will leave it at that. And we'll let folks check it out later on. We'll have this up live, and we'll have it saved so folks can refer back to it. And if there's any questions later on, continue to ask the questions and continue to chat with us. And the dialogue is always open, and not just with us, but find somebody who you know and you trust, and you can just sit down and have a conversation with them about what's really going on. And I've been watching this show called Woke. It's quite funny. It's quite good. If people want a good laugh, a good laugh, but have a little bit of a learning experience as well, go to your closest Hulu network and watch the show Woke, because they talk about some pretty great stuff, some pretty poignant subject matter. So at that note, pineapple pizza.
So
Thanks again, man.
Thank you, man.